everyone, welcome back to my channel. Mac and I are here on vacation, but we wanted to film a video this week, so we decided to do a Q&A. So I asked you all on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube what your questions were so that we could answer them while we're here. So we're sitting in this hot tub enjoying our evening, and we decided to go through some of your questions. You guys asked a lot of them, and answer some of them. So that's what we're gonna do right now. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please make sure to do so. Follow me on Instagram and on Facebook so you can stay up to date with all that's going on with She Equips Herself. And let's get to it. So I'm gonna pick some from Instagram, some from YouTube, and some from Facebook, just because there were so many questions. What are your thoughts on the ammo crisis? I think this is gonna be a popular question, and a lot of people did ask this. Do you think the prices will come back down to normal, or should we remortgage our homes to buy ammo now? I think that it's definitely a real issue, and a lot of people have been asking me where to find ammo. And if you know where to find ammo, please let me know, because I know a lot of people are having problems finding it right now. I don't know when prices are gonna go back to normal.
I don't think they're gonna go back to what you perceive as normal. Every time we've ever had an ammo crisis, it seems like the prices go up and then they come back down, but they don't come back down to where they were. So it's almost like there's always these little bumps. Let's just say it goes up $5 a box. Is it gonna go down $5 a box ever in our lifetime? I would probably say no. It might go down even $4.50. I don't see it going down all the way back where it was. I do see it going back down to a more reasonable number.
What is something you learned from each other as gun owners, or the way you carry? Well, personally, I met Mac because I was taking a concealed carry class, and I wanted to learn more about the laws of concealed carrying on my body, and when I could use a gun and use of force and all that. So Mac taught me a lot in terms of use of force, which has been very important, and I pass that on to you guys because it's super important to know if you're going to be carrying a gun.
You guys have maybe heard me say this before, and I'll say it again. I've been a police officer for about 16 years, and a lot of police officers don't carry off duty. Tons of people I work with don't carry off duty. As far as understanding how females carry firearms on a day-to-day basis when it's not in a duty holster, it was all, articles I read. I didn't really have anyone, even though I've worked with many police officers that are female over the years. They didn't embrace that lifestyle. They didn't carry off duty. They didn't really know how to carry off duty. So Stav's taught me a ton about, every holster she shows for you guys, usually, if it was years ago, I would have been I didn't know what a corset holster was. Why would I ever know what a corset holster was? I'm a guy. I didn't know all the options that females have. I'd heard about the flashbang when it came out because that was such a revolutionary thing. But there's just a million different holsters that are designed to take advantage of the female body as far as concealment goes. And I didn't know as nearly as much about that market as I do now. And so there you go. You taught me a ton about that.
An update on the mag guts in your shield. Maybe tips on low light self-defense shooting, illumination, or handheld, ways to best implement them. I showed you guys I have these kits in my magazines called Mag Guts, and I'll link them below if you want to check them out, but they add extra rounds to your current magazine. So you can turn a 7-round magazine into an 8-round magazine, or an 8-round magazine into a 10-round magazine. I took them to the range and shot a few rounds out of them, but I also used them in a live fire class that Mac did, and they worked great. I shot 150 rounds in that class and then extra at the range, and I didn't have a problem with them.
I like them too. The only thing is, if you have a shield and you're running a 8-round mag that you've turned into a 10-round mag, the plastic sleeve that allows your pinky to become part of your grip, so the plastic sleeve that's at the very bottom of the magazine that your pinky ends up grabbing, you might have to sand or Dremel the very bottom back of that so that it fits flush. It kind of bumps into the back of the mag guts. So I sanded all of ours and it fits just perfect. But you might have to do a little work because it's hard to get the magazine in. You got to give it a real pop if you don't sand it. But I kind of saw that right in the very beginning and I sanded it. So as far as reliability and function, they work great. It's just you got to do a little bit of work to that plastic sleeve when you first get it, and it's been flawless ever since.
So the second part of that question was maybe tips on low light self-defense shooting, illumination, weapon mounted light or handheld, ways to best implement them.
Okay, so the biggest mistake that I see with weapons mounted lights, and it's across the board, everybody seems to do this, is everybody wants the brightest possible light they can get. I mean, if they make the sun and it fits under your pistol, people will buy it and they put it under the... You have to find the balance, especially given where you expect to use your flashlight. But too much light will blind you. So if you have like a lot of white or light walls in your home and you're buying a light for your home defense, and you have a, let's say, a 800 lumen light, when you activate that light, you are going to blind yourself. So yes, you'll blind the bad guy, but you will blind yourself. So you might be way better off with a 250 or even a 400 lumen or something like that, so that you still get the benefits of the amount of light you're casting and none of the negatives of you blinding yourself. And it's super easy to blind yourself when you bounce that light off a white wall. Number two problem I see is people love to point their gun directly at where they want the flashlight to go, because that's standard flashlight procedure when you have a flashlight in your hand, is you're going to point your flashlight directly at what you want to illuminate. Now, when you have a weapons mounted light, that might not be your best option because you don't know if that's worthy of getting a bullet in it. So you got to learn how to bounce your light off the ground deliberately. So you always have your muzzle depressed or in a, whatever position you are. There's a lot that we could talk about with that, but you don't need to activate your light and point it directly at the unknown or the threat. You can point it at the ground near the threat, and you can still fully illuminate that threat and know exactly what's going on. It also allows you to have more heads-up awareness, because a lot of times when people put the gun up and they're looking through the sights and they activate their light, well, it screws up their vision. It screws up their ability to make decisions because there's too much crap in front of their face. So keeping everything out from in front of your face and using your light deliberately to bounce off of walls or bounce off the ground, that's a very, very important technique for a weapons-mounted light. If you're going to go with a handheld light, I mean, you better practice a lot of one-handed stuff. You need to know how to reload. You need to know how to clear malfunctions, how to do both types of reloads. So you need to know how to do a slide lockback reload and a slide, if your slide doesn't lock back because you're holding the gun funny, or if it just doesn't lock back, you got to know how to work it. So in a home defense situation, that could be a real problem. The best places to rack your slide are usually your belt, your holster, or your heel. Well, if you're barefoot, you're not wearing a belt, and you're not wearing a holster, shit. That's not great. So for home defense guns, I'm always a huge advocate for weapons-mounted lights. For concealed carry guns, I usually move in the slightly non-weapons-mounted light direction, unless you're going to get one of those super narrow, like a TLR6, that really is no negative. It's what I have on my, it's relatively new, but it's what I have on my shield. So it doesn't hurt your concealment at all. And you also have a weapons-mounted light on there. So you see this all the time with pepper spray and a lot of other things. Is people buy gear and just kind of automatically assume that they'll know how it works. Like people buy pepper spray all the time and carry it. And they don't know, they've never sprayed it. They don't know how to draw it and spray someone in a short period of time. They certainly don't know how to draw it and spray someone that's actually physically attacking them. They just buy the pepper spray off the shelf, put it in their purse, put it in their pocket, and they think they're good to go. And that's a waste of everyone's time and money, because you're not going to deploy that weapon under stress unless you train heavily with it. Same thing with your lights. If you want to be able to use your lighting correctly, you're going to want to train with it. You're going to want to set up your home and be the bad guy and be the good guy. So you need, hopefully, a partner to help you out with. But so you can see the way the light flows through the house and the way it bounces. It always boils down to one basic topic, and this is really how you should understand low light. You want to be in the dark, and you want the bad guy in the light. And that's really the bottom line. If you're illuminating yourself, whether it's backlight, front light, you're bouncing off the walls. If you're illuminating yourself, you're wrong. You did something wrong. I always highly recommend having no light behind you and no light anywhere near you. I mean, pitch black where you are, and a little bit of light where you expect the bad guy to come from, the end of the hallway, the bottom of the stairs. A little bit of light there so that you can make any decision you need to make. You can see him, decide if he has a weapon, all that stuff. And the tactical lights, the flashlights, they are backups to that plan. The plan should be that you can make all the decisions and do everything you want while you're in the shadows and the bad guy has no idea you're there, and you can see everything that's going on with him. And if that somehow doesn't work out, now you have a tactical light. But you shouldn't even ever really need one. You should set up your home for home defense with that. Now, if you carry one concealed, who the hell knows where you're going to need it. Just don't ever make the mistake of using that weapons-mounted light as a flashlight. You can never draw your gun because you need your flashlight. That's a no-go.
Thoughts on carrying at work or places that you're not supposed to? I wish there was a little clarification on what you're not supposed to means, but I used to work at a bank, and I checked the corporate policy. It didn't say anything about carrying a gun at work. I would carry a gun at work and figured that people would only find out if I ever needed to use one to defend myself or someone else. But I knew that the people that I worked with weren't really pro-gun and probably didn't want me to carry a gun, but I did it anyway. It wasn't against the rules and it wasn't illegal, but I knew that it was kind of frowned upon, but I did it anyway. So in that situation, I feel like it's up to you, because like I said, if people find out, it's probably going to be because you needed it for some sort of defensive situation. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I did the same thing. I carried when I wasn't supposed to too. It's like, okay, fire me, but at least I'll be alive to get fired.
Exactly.
You know, that's kind of how I look at it. And no one's going to know I'm carrying it unless I'm very careless or I have to save my life or someone else's. And at that point, I don't care about the job. Keep the job, whatever.
Yeah, fire me.
So, but that is a balancing act that you have to make. When I did that, when I worked at a place that clearly had a no weapons policy, I didn't have kids, I didn't have any like dependents at all. I was living in an apartment, I didn't even have a house. So it was like, if I got fired, so what?
Yeah.
You know, but like when you have a lot of dependents and a lot of people counting in your paycheck, you have to balance that, you know, that, yeah, there's a lot more risk when there's, you know, more mouths to feed. So
yeah,
you have to kind of figure that out for your own. And that's a personal decision.
As I was editing this video, I realized that at one point, Mac had accidentally splashed some water on the camera and it went into the microphone so you couldn't hear what we were saying. So we're gonna redo some of the questions that we answered yesterday today. A lot of you asked about our wedding plans, and we don't have anything like set in stone yet. I did get my dress and we're thinking it's probably gonna be a destination wedding and probably in October or November. And going along with that, a lot of you wanted to know how Mac proposed to me. So he proposed to me on Christmas Day. My whole family came over our house for dinner and to open presents. So I was eating my dinner and I turned around at one point and he was standing behind me in a suit with a little box in his hand, and I couldn't believe he was proposing. It was very exciting, but I got up and he got down on one knee and said a lot of really nice things to me and asked me to marry him, and I said yes. And it was really nice because my parents and one of my sisters live out of state, so they were on FaceTime, so I got to talk to them afterwards, and yeah, it was just really nice. Would like to know what Mac thinks about 5.56 versus 7.62.
Just in general?
Yes, that's all they asked.
Alright, so 2 military calibers, so let's assume that that question is kind of asking us about their military style usage. Obviously a 308 works better than a 5.56 as far as ballistic performance, but they're much, much heavier. If someone else is carrying your ammunition, or you have a vehicle, or you're just in a defensive situation where having the weight of the ammunition is not a critical factor, then the 308 is probably a better option. But if you have to move around and carry your own ammo, that's kind of the reason why most NATO countries have gone to the 5.56. And if you look at what's going on the other side, like as far as Russia and their allies, they're running almost the exact same thing as a 5.56. They're running a 5.45. So it's light bullets going really fast to maximize the amount of ammunition you can carry because they're much, much lighter. They still work on humans because humans are psychologically frail when it comes to injuries, and you know our bodies aren't, you know, overly tough, so it works most likely just as well in a military environment. If I was in the defense and I was in a fighting hole and I didn't have to run around with ammunition, I could just shoot, I'd probably want a 308. But if I was out on patrol and I had to move with the amount of ammunition I carried, then I would want a 5.56.
Do you watch Netflix? If so, what kind of programming do each of you prefer? We do watch Netflix. We also have Hulu and Amazon and all that. And the most recent Netflix show we both really liked was Schitt's Creek. We also really like Meat Eater on Netflix. It's a hunting show, and probably my favorite hunting show. But we also just watched Yellowstone, which is not on Netflix, but we streamed that. We're all caught up with that. What else?
Peaky Blinders.
Oh, Peaky Blinders, yeah.
We're all caught up with that too. We're waiting on that too.
Have you decided on a honeymoon destination? No, we haven't, but we're thinking maybe somewhere in the Caribbean. If your EDC gun has a safety, can you safely just leave it off while you carry it concealed? My shield that I carry has a safety because they were having like a big sale and I really wanted to get a shield. So I went to the store to get one and they only had the ones with safeties, And so I ended up buying one. I don't like the safety and I never engage it. There have been a couple times where it's been engaged accidentally and I didn't realize it right away. So if you do have a safety on your gun but you don't use it or you don't want to use it, be really mindful of that and make sure you check it every time you go to carry it.
I don't like safeties on handguns. People with safeties screw up more often because of the safety. Let's say, for instance, you take a competent, good shooter and you give them a handgun that has a safety. You probably won't notice any difference. Like if they're a good shooter, they probably practice a lot, they know how to run the safety, there's no problem. When you take a new shooter and they're a little nervous about what's going on, they're nervous about the training course they're going through, or they're just not super comfortable with guns yet, and you stick a safety into the mix, it is more complicated. It's like trying to teach a new driver how to drive with a manual transmission over an automatic transmission. You know, if they're already nervous about other cars on the road and, you know, the rules of the road and doing all the normal driving stuff that, you know, I guess a new driver would feel anxious about, now throw a manual transmission on top of it and watch them freak out when they're doing a hill start and stalling and there's cars behind them beeping at him and all that stuff. When you take a semi-bad shooter or new shooter and you put a safety on them, you just maximize the amount of screw-ups they have. And the thing is, new shooters that are uncomfortable with guns in the first place like buying guns with safeties because they think the safety is going to be a helpful thing, and it's the exact opposite in my experience. If you don't pull the trigger, the gun won't go bang. And if you just teach them that, stay away from the trigger until you want to shoot the gun, and you just have them focus on that rule, they're going to be more successful than when you introduce the safety into the mix. And what I've seen over and over and over again, and I know Stavroula's seen this many times again, is we will have a relatively inexperienced shooter in one of our self-defense classes and they have a safety, and as soon as I see him messing with the safety, I look at Stav right away and I'm like, watch this, I know this is going to be a friggin' nightmare student, and it almost always is. And it's almost always the same problem, and it goes like this. They will draw their firearm, they will come up, they're either going to pull the trigger while the weapon is still unsafe, or they're going to pull the trigger and the gun's going to go bang. But in their nervous reaction to either one, they flip it. So if they come out and they go and it doesn't go bang, now they look at the gun, they look at the gun. Now their finger is still on the trigger because they're not mastering the finger off trigger technique. They're thinking about too many things, including the safety. So their finger's sitting on that trigger, they look at the gun sideways, and then you watch them click off that safety, and every once in a while, they send around downrange like this because they're too involved with the safety and not involved enough with the trigger finger. Or what you see at the range all the time is they come out of the holster and the first round goes bang, and it shocks them, or they're not ready for it. And then when they go to take their second shot, sometimes they put the safety on in between the first or second or third shot. They just manually, that thumb just comes up and hits that safety sometimes. So now the safety's on. So they got a live round to go off. Now they go for that additional shot, and then it doesn't go off, and then they do the exact same thing. Now they look at the gun, finger is still on the trigger, and they're messing with the safety. I've seen people come out of the holster and honestly like go flick that thing from safe to fire back and forth like 3 times within a 5-shot drill. Just ignore the safety, focus on the trigger, and shoot. I mean, there's a huge reason why Glock is as successful as it is. Glocks don't have safety, but if you don't pull the trigger, it will not go bang. It's a very reliable firearm, and it's very safe if you don't pull the trigger. So for me, I do not like safeties on handguns. There was never a safety on any revolver, and we had nowhere near the amount of accidental or negligent discharges we have now. And I honestly believe the safety is one of the #1 things. And people, they'll point their gun all around and then they'll say, don't worry about it, the safety's on. It's like, no, that's not okay. Like, you have to focus on what you are doing. Don't point your gun at other people, and don't put your finger on the trigger. That's like the rules, all right? Safety, if you become competent with firearms, and then after you're competent and you're a decent shooter and your confidence is good, and you prefer to carry a gun with a safety, you'll never hear a complaint from me.
Is that Mila?
But if you're, is Mila jumping in the back?
Yeah.
But if you are kind of a nervous shooter and you choose a gun with a safety, I guarantee you're going to have more trouble, and there's going to be more to think about, and you're more likely to screw up. So.
How did your families feel about the age gap in the beginning of your relationship?
Good girl.
We are 12 years apart. Mac is 12 years older than me. My parents have a 10-year age gap. My dad is 10 years older than my mom, and they've been married for like 44 years now. And my sister, she and her husband have like a 15-year age gap, and they've been married for over 10 years. So my family, we do pretty well with the age gap relationships. My parents didn't have an issue with it. They love Mac, so there was no issue there. Are you optimistic about the future of the Second Amendment? I want to be, because I'm an optimist, but
I'm much more realistic than her. I believe that our Second Amendment rights are going to be chipped away at heavily over the next 4 years, and I don't know what we're going to end up with. I'm not optimistic. I am pessimistic about our Second Amendment rights with the, current situation in America. So we'll see what actually happens.
Have you decided on how you're going to wear your hair for the wedding?
Yes, I'm going to do an updo.
That would look great on you, baby. Favorite date night meal?
Sushi.
What are your favorite night sights for a pistol?
It doesn't matter as much the company you go with, whether you go with Trijicon or you go with something else, but I really like different colored front sight than back sight. So like I want the brightest of whatever colors you're looking at to be on my front sight, and then I want the dimmer two colors to be on my rear sight. So for me, like green and red jump out because I've seen a ton of those lights. So I want my front sight to be that green, because I find in my eyes that green, that kind of, Luke
like
Skywalker lightsaber green pops a little bit more. And then the rear sight's red because they're a little dimmer for me. So rear sight's red, front sight green to me that's a good setup. But I don't like 3 greens, 3 reds, 3 oranges. I like them to be different, and I like my front sight to be the loudest as far as like just your eyeball picking it up. However you want to find that, there you go. That to me, that's the best. And again, and I run into this all the time. Things that I really like are hard to find. Like, I'm always saying to her that company makes that wrong. That's doing that wrong. That holster's not right. I got to get my. There's always something to fix on almost every piece of gear that I seem to buy. My Dremel tool and my soldering iron, and I'm always customizing everything. So my guess is you're going to jump online, and whoever asked that question, you're going to find like a million, and it's going to be the opposite. It'll probably be like a red front sight and green rear sights, and to me that's not how my eyeballs work. The red doesn't pop as much as the green. So
how did you transition to Stepmom? You guys are such a great team. Yes, we are. Mac has 2 boys. We wanted to be like really careful about how we introduced me to them. We wanted it to be like an easy transition for them. In the beginning, Mac introduced me to the kids as like his friend and someone who's going to be around to like help him out with stuff. We just kind of like, I had babysitters. I had multiple female babysitters that would take care of them if I was busy and be around. And I worked the overnight shift, so there would be many times where the babysitter would be home and I'd be asleep. But there'd be a lot of transition time there. So when Stavroula started coming over and I introduced her to the boys, and she started playing with the boys, we just followed that pattern. This is going to be another person that's going to keep an eye on you when I'm either busy or working on another project, or I'm sleeping, or I'm teaching classes or whatever. Just like a play pal for them. And we didn't like come up to the kids and go, sit them down and say, hey, by the way, Stavroula's, Dad's girlfriend, and she's going to be around all the time now, and we hope you like her. Like, she just played with them, and they had their own relationship first, and they would always, they were like, when's Stav coming over? And they were always interested in playing with Stav. They took to her right away, and there was no pressure at all on the kids. And then it was months and months later that I talked to the boys and said, you guys really like playing with Stav. You like when Stav's around. And they were both, yeah, we love Stav. We love when she comes over. When she coming over again, I'm like, well, what do you think about her kind of just living here? And they just kind of like, yeah, that'd be awesome, And then kind of just slowly transitioned them. And before, there was no like hard and fast, you better like her or else kind of thing. There was just, they just liked, very subtly smooth, and it worked absolutely great. I would highly recommend, if you ever have to go through a situation like that, do it as gently and as smoothly as you can, rather than kind of dumping it on the kids and saying, like, I think, like, I look back now and I think what we just did, just kind of like, we didn't really have a plan. It just worked out that way, and it was definitely a very smooth, very easy transition for the kids and for me and for you and everything. So such a cute couple. This question is for Mac. Would you recommend a lighter grain 38 special cartridge to minimize the recoil in my Ruger LCR X38 special snub nose revolver? I use 158 grain right now. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, that's a light gun. I'm sure you know, it's got that nice rubber grip, but you know, it's going to be a stout recoil. And if you're firing 158 grains, even if you're shooting 158 standard pressure, you know, the weight of that bullet is going to cause some significant recoil. So if you want to drop to a lighter bullet, absolutely. Why the heck not? Make that gun a little bit more comfortable, a little bit better on your follow-up shots. I'm not exactly certain what ballistic performance you're really going to lose out of a snub. See, snub nose revolvers, when you're looking at the ballistic reports on them, like a lot of times if you're searching for, you know, you take your 158 grain, whatever it might be, and you're trying to look up the velocity and the energy of it, you're probably not, whatever information you're getting, the data you're getting is more likely to be out of a 4-inch barrel. And when you cut that barrel down, it's probably like a Ruger, would you say, what was it, a Ruger
LCR
X?
X.
So that's the same revolver I had. You drop that barrel down to a 1.87-inch barrel, you've cut it more than half. So you're really changing the ballistics of it. So what you think you're getting is probably not what you're getting. So dropping down to, you know, you could probably go down all the way to like 110 in that neighborhood grain bullet and still get decent performance out of it. Probably more performance than hopefully you'll ever need, and it'll be a little more comfortable to shoot. And here's the thing, confidence means a lot.
Yeah.
So like if you're more confident with it because it's not going to kick the hell out of your hand, and you like shooting it better because it doesn't hurt your hand, that's going to probably be a better tool than you just like, I hope you know, every time I pull the trigger this thing beats the hell out of me.
And
so
you'll probably practice with it more.
yeah, so yeah, I would absolutely lighten up that load. Hornady makes lights, I know that, and they make self-defense lights. You maybe even look at those, but yeah, don't worry about that. Drop that weight down, make that gun a little more comfortable to shoot, and it'll still be ballistically superior or ballistically in line with a 380 with the lighter bullet. So you're still in good shape.
The latest issue of a magazine I got from USCCA said not to carry pepper spray and a firearm at the same time, because if you're forced to use your firearm, the authorities will throw the book at you because they'll say you should have used the pepper spray instead since you were carrying it. What's your opinion of that? I would love to see that article because I don't know why they say that. I definitely disagree with that. I think that you should carry multiple tools so that you have different options for different situations, because if I'm going to be using a firearm, it's because there's a threat of death or serious bodily harm, and pepper spray might not be a proper way or an effective way to respond to that. If I have a gun in that situation, I would use the gun most likely. If I only have a gun, if a situation calls for non-lethal force, I wouldn't have another way to deal with it, and I might go to the gun when I should. So I definitely like having more than one option so that I can respond to different types of situations.
I could not disagree with that article more. I can't even believe they would publish that. That seems like...
I wonder if that's some sort of error.
That seems just ludicrous to even say out loud. The authorities they're talking about, I'm assuming are police. So when I go to work, I have to carry on my body pepper spray, a taser. By the way, my taser has both, you can deploy probes, shoot them, they shoot out of the gun, or I can drive stun. So let's say that's 3 weapons right there. I have a baton, I have a handgun. In my vehicle, I have a 40mm direct impact weapon, and I have a rifle. So I have all those options. It's because you have to use the right tool at the right situation. You know, what the bad guy's doing kind of tells you which tool to use. So I can't even imagine knocking me down to one tool. That's just crazy. So whenever I'm off duty, whenever I teach anybody about carrying off duty, whenever I'm teaching detectives, it's always at least a gun and pepper spray. For all law enforcement, at least a gun and pepper spray, nothing less than that. I go with the same scenario for all my civilian concealed carriers, a gun and pepper spray. You need to have a tool for all your non-deadly assaults and non-deadly situations, and you need a tool for the deadly encounters. The gun obviously deals with the deadly encounters. Someone's trying to kill you or give you an injury you'll never recover from, you use your gun. All other situations, you use pepper spray. You don't want to ever get into a wrestling match or a fist fight. You never want to become physical if you're carrying a gun, because then the bad guy can get your gun from you. So the pepper spray gives you standoff, and the beautiful thing about it is it hurts like hell. It's very it's just
Effective.
Debilitating as far as how powerful it is on your face and eyes. It works awesome, and then no one has any permanent injuries. I get into a fist fight with someone, I punch them in the face, I can hurt my hand, I can break my bones in my hand, I can break their nose. You can do permanent damage punching people. Right? Pepper spray is not permanent. 45 minutes, everyone's going to be fine. So it's just an outstanding tool. And again, like just listening, like replaying that article, the title of that article in my mind, just like makes me want to find that person and be like, what the hell are you thinking? You're giving awful advice to a lot of people. So flat out,
disagree.
Flat, like aggressively disagree. And there's all sorts of people out there that are constantly giving horrible advice. So be careful with what you listen to.
What to do if your family is not comfortable with you carrying a gun?
I can't answer this one because I was shooting in the first grade.
My family was never really uncomfortable with guns, but I have had like friends who are uncomfortable with guns, and it comes down to the fact that it's your right. And if you're at like a family member's house and they say like, I don't want you carrying a gun in my house, that's their house, that's their rule. If that's what they're gonna go by, and you really want to carry a gun, then maybe you just don't go there. And if they know that it's important to you, maybe you can explain to them why it's important to you. Maybe you can try to take those family members to the range or teach them a little bit about gun safety so that they kind of understand more about it, because a lot of the times people are uncomfortable because of a lack of education.
I don't think anyone would ever invite me over and think I wasn't carrying. Like, if you know me enough to invite me over, you know what I do.
What is the biggest gun handling mistake you've seen new gun owners do?
Can we go back to the safety?
Yeah, safety issues.
Pointing the gun. They look at the gun. Pistols are just, they get people wave them all over the place. They put their finger on the trigger. And here's another thing about understanding. When handguns especially are designed, they're designed to fit naturally and comfortable in your hand while shooting, which means your finger is designed to sit on that trigger. And that's like the most comfortable way it sits on this. So if you hand a gun to someone who doesn't even know anything about guns, like let's just say that like just they have zero knowledge guns even existed, and you hand it to them, that index finger, that trigger finger will naturally rest on that trigger. That's where it will go, like by design. So you have to like practice and train to not put your finger on the trigger. So finger being on the trigger is a huge one. Not paying attention to where they're pointing it, that's a huge one. And then obviously anytime you bring a safety into the mix, you're adding a lot of, you would think it's only one other thing, but under stress and under pressure, when people are nervous, it's a big another thing. It's just another thing that gets screwed up. So
knowing the safety rules and like really practicing them, keeping your finger off the trigger and knowing what safe direction is like really huge.
And,
so
all right, so the other thing is, if we're gonna jump out of the handgun world, it's gonna be a pump action shotgun. So like pump action shotguns, people screw it up all the time. They forget to put around the chamber and they don't realize the action release is there. They shoot and they forget to pump. And in fact, I just saw the other day, I was watching a police training video, and a police officer, he's got a less lethal shotgun. He comes out of the car and he racks around, and it was for training, so he's like, less lethal up, and he's screaming, and he comes over, and as soon as he goes to point it at the subject, he takes his hand off the pump and he's holding it like by the receiver like this. And I'm watching it going like, you know, like, why is your hand off the pump, sir? Like, you know that once you shoot that guy, it's like, it's never a one shot. Maybe on TV. In real life, it takes generally between 2 and 4 less lethal shots. So whether you're using the 40mm or whether you're using a super sock round, you're probably going to be using 4 shots. Like, and if you're training people on this, you know you're going to whack the guy, whack the guy, whack the guy, and then hopefully he doesn't want to be, you know, be a problem anymore. But you might have to hit him 4 or 5 times. So like your hand needs to be on the pump, because this needs to happen in relatively quick succession. So the pump action shotgun causes a lot of problems for non-pump action shotgun people. So safeties on pistols, pistols in general, trigger finger, the pump on a pump action shotgun, those are the problems that I see the most in my world.
That's gonna do it for this Q&A. We had a lot more questions that we didn't get to, so maybe we'll do a part 2 if you guys liked this video. Let us know below if you want to see a part 2, and we'll film one for you guys answering more questions. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!